Hi, Kelvin here from IllustratorClass, and in this video tutorial we're going to turn an image of a falcon into the effect of an engraving using Illustrator. So follow the tutorial with me, and right, let's get started. Hi and welcome to IllustratorClass. I'm Kelvin, and in this tutorial we're going to see how we can create an engraving effect using this image of a falcon. Right, so let's get started. Okay, so we've imported it into Photoshop. We've duplicated the layer, and then we've gone to the magic wand tool and we've clicked onto the background and pressed the delete key. Then we've got our background transparent, and now we'll duplicate that layer by pressing Ctrl J and taking the viewer and then going back to the bottom layer and doing Ctrl thumb, holding down Ctrl thumb to get back our marching ants, and then we just say Alt backspace. That drops in the foreground color, which is black. Right, we take the viewer off, we go to the top layer again, and we're going to turn that into a black and white. So we go Ctrl U, that brings down our U saturation. We take the saturation right down to black and white and then add some lightness to it. So remember, U saturation is Ctrl U. Then we're going to go to Ctrl L, that brings the layers panel up. Then we drag the right hand slider and the left hand slider, not the middle slider. That will give us a good black and white, but notice that there's still some gray areas, so we go back to Ctrl L, back to levels, and we drag the slider again, the right slider and the left slider, and then we'll get a much better black and white image of our falcon. We can do it a third time, but that's not really necessary. But what we want at the end is a very good black and white image only. Right, now that we've got that layer, we're going to go back to the magic wand tool, because we're going to select a white area. Notice that you get marching ants around the white area, but we do right click to select similar as well, so that we get all the white areas. And then we can take a view, if we just put on the view on that layer, we'll just see all the highlight parts. So again, we do Ctrl thumb to drop in the black color. Alt backspace will drop in the black color again. That'll be all our highlights. So now we can close our file and then go to Illustrator. So once we're in Illustrator, we're going to create artboards. On the properties side, you'll see there's artboards. We just click in plus so that we create 4 artboards. So now you can see we've created 4 artboards. And we close it, and there's our 4 artboards. Now we're going to just open up our PNGs that we've saved, and we just drop and drag all 3 PNGs. So remember, in Photoshop we had created PNGs of those 3 layers. So we size it down because we want to fit a page. So we size it down to fit an artboard. So each artboard represents a different page. It just makes it easier to work on our individual falcons. So let's size up as big as possible, so that all the falcons are in proportion. Right, then we can do ungroup it. You know the shortcut key for ungroup. Otherwise, you can go to Object on top and ungroup. So once you've ungrouped it, we're going to put our black and white falcon on the second artboard, and on the third artboard is our highlights. Right, so let's continue. Now we've got our silhouette image of the falcon, which we're going to go image trace on the property bar. Then notice we go to the image trace panel. This brings up the panel, and we take the paths to 100%. So that is the settings. Once you've done that, you can click ignore white. So you check that box, ignore white, and we click expand. So on the property bars, you click expand. Right, then you've traced it. So there you've got a trace. The trace is black, so we want to change it to white because we want a white fill and a black outline. Now to do the black outline, we click onto that little tool and we choose it as black, and now you'll see that we've got a white fill with a black outline. Right, on the next artboard with the black and white falcon, we also go image trace on top. Once we've traced it, we go to the little panel, we click that little panel button, change paths to 100%, and check the box that says ignore white. Then click expand on the property bar. So property bar, expand. Then you can close it. Right, then the next one is our highlights. We do the same process. Image trace, panel, trace panel button, paths 100%, ignore white, checkbox, and back to the property bar where you click expand. Right, then we've got our traced images. Right, next thing we have to do is we've got to create our wavy lines. So we go to our pen tool, we hold down the shift key and make a click and a click. That gives us a line. We hold down shift and C and we curve it up. Now we've got a curved line up, so we make a duplicate by holding down the Alt key on the keyboard and simply dragging it with a mouse and making sure that we now mirror image it. So we go to transform and we go to reflect. So reflect is where we do the horizontal reflect, and that does a mirror image, and then we just drag it down and make sure that the two ends meet. You will see it will snap to it. Then we've got to select both just by marquee dragging with the select tool and Control G to group it. Once it's grouped, we can size it down a little bit smaller, and again hold down the Alt key to drag it across to create the duplicate and to make sure it snaps at the other end. Just a reminder, to zoom in and out, we hold the Alt key on the keyboard and use the roller mouse button. That roll on the mouse, we use that little roller button to zoom in and out. Right, so we create a duplicate of it again because now we've got to blend the two objects. So we select both. By holding down the shift key, we select both, then go to object, we go to blend, and we go to blend make. So whatever the default is, it will do the blend, but we would want at least 100 lines. So we go back to blend, but we go to blend options. And under the list, we choose specific steps. Then from the 21, which is the default, we just type in 100 and click OK. There's a much smoother blend, and that's our line effect or our graving effect that we're going to create to our image. Right, now we're going to drag that to our first artboard, and we're going to get a slight rotation because we want it at an angle. So we go to the corner handlebar button, but just as we move it slightly to the outside, we'll see it turns into little arrows, which is the rotation arrows, and we can rotate it at a slight angle. Then we also got to size it down. So again, we size it down to fit the silhouette image of the falcon. So that the wavy lines are quite small. So we want the wavy lines to be relatively small. Right, once it's positioned, we then need to do the clipping function. For that, we go to the layers panel. So on the layers panel, we move the blended layer down to below the silhouette group. So you can see it there on the layers panels. Once it's just below the silhouette, we hold down the shift key and select both objects, both layers. Then we go to object and we go to clipping mask and make. And there, once you click yes, it will clip the lines inside the silhouette. And that's that part done. Now let's go over to the black and white image of the falcon and overlay it. So we select it all, group it so that it's one group, and we overlay it over the wavy lines. So we need to position it to be overlaid exactly. This may be a little bit of a trial and error, but choose a good point and then just match it to the other point. A tip here is just to use a corner or an edge of the one object and then an edge to the next object. Now again, we're going to zoom in and out to get to the highlights part of the Falcon. So again, we got to select it all and turn it into highlights, which is white. So we go to the Fill tool and choose white and click OK, and then we've got a white fill, so that will be the highlights. And now once we've grouped that again, we've also went to Control G to group it. We're going to do the overlay. Now here again, it must overlay it exactly so that there are no lines, that you can see that there are no lines sticking out. So we want it as an exact overlay. So you might have to move it out a little bit, and by choosing an edge, get a good match so that it overlaps exactly. Right, so that's a good overlap or overlay. Now you can see what we're going to do now. Once we erase the highlights or the white part of the highlights and we erase it, then you will see that the eraser tool will reveal the lines beneath. So let's see how that is done. Right, so here we would first have to lock the two layers at the bottom so that the only layer that is unlocked is the highlight area. We go to the eraser tool from the toolbox, and we use the keys on the keyboard to get the size correctly. That's the bracket keys. Once we've got our size correct, we can just simply brush out, and that will reveal the lines. So now we're brushing out the highlight parts, but because it's locked, the lines won't move, neither will the lines be erased because it is locked. Now we're going to start erasing the areas that we want. So we want to erase quite a lot of the highlights, especially by the feather areas, and the highlights we're going to use minimal. So I'm going to just quickly speed it up, the process, because this is takes a bit of time, and you choose the correct highlight parts. So there you can see I've only forwarded the video a little bit, and this is to show you can change the angles as well. That's by double clicking on the eraser. You can set the angle so that you can have a good angle and a good size of your edge of the eraser tool. So after adjusting the eraser tool and erasing, the end result would be the highlights at the specific areas that you want. This gives the impression that your Falcon has now got an engraving effect. So that will be your end result. So you've got a black and white. The white is the highlights parts, and then the lines are showing the engraved areas. So that's a good example of our Falcon. Try it for yourself in